Hi, I'm Beth, and you're listening to the StageLeft podcast. The podcast exists to provide free educational content for young musicians entering an increasingly complex industry by telling the stories of those behind the success. And today we'll be counting down the top 10 episodes from the 2024 podcast season, with every episode from the last year earning a single spot in the countdown, highlighting the exceptional moments and inspirational highlights from the past year. Hi, I'm Beth, and I joined the StageLeft podcast in 2024 after finishing my degree in event management. Music is something I've always been exceptionally passionate about, so being able to join a podcast that inspired me during my studies is an incredible opportunity, the kickstart I needed to join the industry. My role within the podcast is typically YouTube management and editing the videos that you're watching right now. So if you enjoy them, please make sure you like and subscribe. That way I know I'm doing my job right. Joining the podcast has allowed me to continue my work as a small business as well as hosting my own YouTube channel. Before we start, I'd like to extend a big thank you to Chris and the rest of the team for this incredible opportunity to present today. So without further ado, here's the countdown. Coming in at number 10. Jessica Greenfield, experiencing postpartum depression and touring as a new parent. She delved deep into discussing her experience while working with Noel Gallagher's High Flying Birds as a member of their touring team.
It was something that I was kind of anxious about from the minute I got pregnant, to be honest, and something I probably put off getting pregnant because of. So how have I done it? I mean, I've got an incredibly supportive husband who, if it wasn't for him, I don't think I would have been able to, I think I would have not seen my daughter enough. We've got supportive parents, and actually, I think just the supportiveness of Noel's tour manager and the band have meant that, they've made her feel welcome.
Her openness about motherhood and honesty about postpartum depression was both unique and provided us a perspective that's usually forgotten about within the music industry.
King to see her, and they'd flown to Florida, and then they were in the room, and then they were hiding. So when I came in, and she was just like, "Mommy." She's so little still, so she was just beside herself. It was so beautiful.
Number 9, Rolle of Chic. In his episode, not only does he discuss his distinctive open hand drumming techniques.
Coming up in New York, I used to play in bands. And one particular band, I had to play percussion on the left side. And at the time, it was only claps. It was a big Japanese artist named Toshi Kubota. And that required a lot of triggering, which expanded my whole setup over here. And I had trigger pads over here. So being open-handed like that allowed me the ability to continue to groove, fill, and play multi-rhythmic patterns on my left hand.
And when it came time to pay respects to David Bowie, collaborating with Lady Gaga.
It was so funny because Sterling Campbell, who's a drummer for Bowie, is a very close friend of mine. And me being me, when Noel called me and said, "Listen, I'm doing a tribute on the Grammys to David Bowie, and I want you to do it." The first words out of my mouth, honestly, was, is Sterling Campbell not available? And I wasn't saying it to get out of it. I'm saying it because that's my dude.
Within the episode, he also highlights his collaborational work with artists such as Nile Rodgers.
And this is David Bowie, and this is a tribute. So it just made musical and logical sense to me. But Nile went with who he knew, which was me. And I've been working with Nile at that point for probably close to 13, 14 years. So he said to me, "You don't want to do it?" And I said, "No, of course I want to do it. I just want to, He said, "No, I'm using my guys, to do this. And I think we'll kill it." And I said, "Cool, let's do it." So we get out to California. They put together this medley, Nile does, along with Russell Graham. And it's a really cool medley of David Bowie songs, right? It's a lot of tempo changes. It's a lot of movement. So in my ears, I have a click that I have to stay on. And the rehearsals are going great. There's a full horn section back there. So the show was sequenced to the time clock, to the different tempos with the lights, and then her keyboard. Everything starts. I hear the click in my head. First song, ground control to major tom. Everything is great. When the drummer is in, the click almost disappears because you're so in time you can hardly hear it. And I'm like, oh man, this is great. I mean, it started out wonderful, and then I go, man, I am so in this click, I don't even hear it. So then I'm listening. I'm going, the click is gone. The trick is gone, completely gone. So over stage right is my drum tech. And I look over at him and he can see on my face the panic. And he looks back at me and he goes, and I'm like, do we stop? Like, Noel is in now. Noel is in. I mean, he's grooving. Gaga's grooving. Sadiq is, everybody's grooving. And the show is going on. So I'm just going blind off of what we rehearsed.
And at number 8, Erron Baron Cohen, known famously for his work on Dove of Peace.
That song was written to make peace in the Middle East. And the guy that had a Palestinian guy in a room from the Palestinian Authority, and they were kind of hating each other, but they agreed to be in the room together, which was great. And he was going to create world peace by bringing together. And then he would get them to sing the song Dove of Peace together. Great studio. I think it was Westlake Studios in LA, which is a legendary studio there. And I suppose I was producing the session with all these guys there. And Slash was in, upstairs, and Elton John was coming in, and it was all. It sounds great, but of course, it was just to add to the tension and chaos. They were filming the movie at the same time, and then Snoop Dogg was coming in with his. He has a bouncer called Tiny, who was the size of a door. Snoop did an amazing rap that he improvised it, and it was basically he knew the song was Dove of Peace, so he did this incredible un-Snoop like rap about peace and love, about coming together. And it was beautiful. It was. I don't know if I was crying, but it was amazingly emotional. It was just completely wrong, because Snoop was there to do his, I'm going to put a gun to your mouth, to say it, to be Snoop, So I think Sasha had to say, could you just do it again, but more Snoop?
Discussing his influences for both personal and professional development.
Got into synthesizers and electronic music quite young. I think when I was 13, I saved up and bought my first Moog synthesizer, Moog Rose, which was their little 2 oscillator. Got into craft work and some lot of German synthesis people like Klaus Schulze and Tangerine Dream.
Nice.
They were they're definitely, Jean-Michel Jarre was a big influence as well. And so I was always interested in electronic music. I used to buy Sounds on Sound magazine and read it every month, and was quite interested.
Composing the music for such iconic shows such as The Ali G Show, Borat, and The Infidel.
When they're filming, it's also quite secret what they're doing, because obviously that was probably the most dangerous thing he's ever done, singing in a field of extreme right-wing Trump supporters who were brandishing machine guns and sort of pissing them off with this song. They had one chance of doing it. So the idea behind the song was to create a sort of a sense for the people in there that there was something to sing along with very quickly, pick up, sing along, and before they know it, they're singing, about chopping up people and just seeing how far they could take, their involvement. That was the point, really.
Number 7, Share Adelekan, Gorillaz live band.
When Gorillaz are playing, I'm not afraid of anyone, like, with such a good band. So it's like if we're not headlining a festival, I feel sorry for anybody playing after us. And when we're headlining a festival, I feel like we're there to show people why we're here. And I quite like that. It's a huge pressure, but it's, again, one hard earned. I've sort of done thousands and thousands of gigs, and so has everyone else on stage. And Damon even more so than any of us. So it's like, you look around you when you're on a gig that big and in a band of that level, you can kind of feel confident in the lads and ladies to your left and right, and be like, okay, well, we all know, and not just actually on stage, the crew, from the crew to people doing merch, to our drivers, to the caterers, to, wardrobe, backstage, blah, blah, blah. It's like every single person here is top tier.
In addition to talking about Youth of the Apocalypse.
What happened with the Youth of the Apocalypse? Because that just looked like that was going to blow up to be something exactly so huge, and it ended very, very quickly.
Yeah, and that, I must say, that was Jeff Wooten, guitarist with Gorillaz and just amazing guitarist. It was his project, him and Jamie Reynolds, Claxons. They started making this music together, and then they brought me and Jay in, and then we brought Chucky Garcia and Young Lazarus MC. Unfortunately, I think it just came at a bit of a time in our lives that I don't think it was the right time. We all kind of just needed to step away.
Switching it up from all discussions about the Gorillaz.
It also comes with a certain kind of humility to get into rooms with different people who can do things that you can't do, and then orchestrating that all together around yourself. He's unbelievable at putting people, regardless of where they come from, what they look like, what language they speak. It's just if you're great, you're great. Doesn't matter, doesn't care. It's just get near me. I want to be around that. He still loves just being around music being created in a fresh way. He's also, allergic to doing the same thing twice.
Coming in at number 6, John Blease, Robert Plant, Florence and the Machine, and Paolo Nutini. With incredible stories featuring the likes of Florence and the Machine.
Yeah, that gig on Wednesday there was at the Albert Hall, and it was playing Florence and the Machine's first album in its entirety, because it's 15 years old, with a full orchestra, choir, the drummer. There was 3 kind of core drummers. Well, me on the main drum kit, 2 other guys playing like rhythm percussion, and then there was 2 orchestral percussionists as well. So he was pitching it that the 3 kind of bandy guys would all be standing. So I then started thinking about that, and I had to listen to the music, and I was like, because obviously playing the drums standing up, drum kit standing up is a bit of a no-go really. But her music, I listened to it, it didn't have much hi-hat going on. So I thought, do you want to know what? I could do this, Jules, let's go for it.
Alongside collaborating with Paolo Nutini.
Now, like, he had a big break for a while, and then I was a big part of the latest album, and it did pretty well, and again, I don't really know, but it did go to number 1, so I kind of see that as, and people seem to enjoy it. We've just done like 2.5 years worth of gigs, and I don't think there was one that wasn't sold out. We finished the tour there in Paisley, which is his hometown.
Yeah.
And we raised 300 grand. I mean, Paolo really, but we all did the gig for free. So did everybody involved, from the trucks to the buses to the PA lights. And so we all chipped in that way, but Paolo managed to raise 300 grand on this gig because it's only 1,000 capacity. So the theory was a text ballot. You could enter 4 times for a pair of tickets. Now, enough people entered to raise, and it was £3 a text, I think. We raised 300 grand, and that's gone to two local charity. No, one bigger charity and 1 local charity in Paisley, where that kind of money, 150 grand, is going to change lives.
And Robert Plant.
Some stuff on me playing with high-profile artists, because normally that's the kind of thing that impresses a manager or something like that. That, in my head anyway, they want to say, oh, you've played with X, Y, and Z. Oh, that's great. The word back, yeah, Robert's not really feeling this, because obviously he doesn't need to, know that he's worked with everyone in the world, and it's Robert Plant. He was in Led Zeppelin, so you don't need to impress him with playing with whoever. So my friends in the band said, put together another one of all the more obscure, improvised, niche kind of releases and things that you've done over the years. He invited me to the Albert Hall. Not always about the kind of high profile stuff, is it?
Our episode with John Blease is easily one of our most anecdotal from the previous year. Number 5, James Walsh, Starsailor. While this podcast primarily focuses on the performance aspects of being a musician, this episode took a different turn, with James speaking candidly about his experience working within the music business itself.
There was accusations from the Stones that he withheld royalty payments, that he stole publishing rights to their songs, he neglected to pay their tax for 5 years, and that led to their kind of French exile in 1971. What was it like to work or interact with him? And as a young person, like, how do you walk into meetings or communications with someone of that kind of profile? How did you go about that, and what would you advise young musicians going into meeting people like that in future?
The only time we met him in person was after we stopped working with Phil Spector.
Ouch.
And he wanted to have this sort of summit meeting. Well, I think he just basically wanted to humiliate us for kind of treating his client like that, without any sort of thought for how the whole process might be affecting our mental health or our kind of our sort of side of things.
His composition work for movies such as Fever and The Greatest Story Never Told.
Definitely have more modest expectations when I do my solo stuff. A sort of open creative outlet where anything goes almost. Basically, as long as the idea is good, without wanting to sound too simplistic about it, as long as I can stand by it and go like, I'd listen to that kind of thing. It's not, there's maybe less concern over how big an audience it might reach or how it's going to translate to Starsailor fans. I just think, well, honesty is a big thing as well. I've not tried to be someone else, or I've not tried to fit to a formula. It's just an honest feeling about a certain thing that's happened, or even just how I felt that night.
And at number 4, Chris Maas, Sting 3.0.
It was terrifying because, first of all, we started the first set of rehearsals, which wasn't really a rehearsal because we'd never been in the studio as a three-piece. And I'd done very limited work with him. And he invited me to New York, and we went to New York, and we booked ourselves in a studio in Manhattan. And we spent 5 days in that studio trying to see whether his idea of stripping it down to a three-piece would actually work. No one would give me a set list of songs that he might pull, you know what I mean? So I was like left to wonder like what possibly he could be wanting to play. And I decked the show for the previous drummer, who's a guy called Zach Jones, who's a phenomenal drummer. I came in with no rehearsals into that show. So I prepped like about 20 tracks that I felt comfortable with playing for that show. So I started with those 20, and then I basically worked around that sort of, I was like, if I've got those 20 rock solid, then that's probably day one sorted or whatever. But I wasn't ready for what was about to happen, which was that he walked in on day one with a list of 72 songs.
In addition to auditioning, sound checking, practicing and performing with Sting, ready for Sting 3.0, Chris also discusses and compares the different types of music education he experienced between studying in Luxembourg and the UK.
First at a regular music school, from when I was like 6 until I was about 12. I studied at a regular music school. I did like music theory, and then, that's where I started my drum lessons. My dad got me these drum lessons with a tutor, and in Luxembourg, the whole music education is very formal. So like for the first 2 years, when my dad was paying me to get drum lessons, my drum tutor at the time basically said, we have to do 2 years of snare drum before you can sit at a drum set. 2 years of just, etudes and rudiments and, And in hindsight, I couldn't be more thankful. They don't really teach you Led Zeppelin or Van Halen at the conservatory, you know what I mean? But that's the sort of music I was into at the time. So I moved to London in 2006, actually. And I wanted a radical change. So I wanted to change that up, and I was looking for schools where I could become a session player and learn popular music, like rock music, pop music, funk music. Like I wanted to be able to play it all. Conservatory had given me the tools to play all these different styles at the time. I felt very well prepared, but I needed to get out of the country because the resources and the opportunities in Luxembourg are very limited for a session musician.
At number 3, the second of this year's live episodes, the 1975 touring band sequel.
I've been this for 9 years, and probably I spent half of that time trying to figure myself out in what my approach was going to be or what worked. What I'm down to is that I think I just have to trust in my and our ability. I feel like when that, I don't know, I mean, a high profile show or a pub show for me, I want to deliver this to the same level. It doesn't really matter where it is. I have to remember that it's I know what I'm doing, I've done this a million times before, and try and just really enjoy where I am and what I'm doing and the music that I'm playing. Try not to overthink it, which sometimes is easier said than done. But yeah, really just trusting in your ability, even if you feel oh my God, what if I've forgotten how to play?
Allowing the artists to discuss collaboration and individual projects.
The people that I work closely with are very dear friends of mine. And so it's more just to kind of say, let's get together for coffee or for dinner. I think that's part of being in a scene and in a network of musicians. It's a very, I think we kind of roam in friendship circles just as much as we do professional circles.
Gabby has chosen not to mention it yet, but she's actually drumming with Perry, is that right, from Little Mix, and played Wembley Stadium this summer. So that kind of, those feelers you were putting out led to playing Wembley Stadium, which is one of the, obviously the pinnacle places to play.
Alongside insights on touring with the 1975.
The contrast is just indescribable. The one thing that I've always found the most challenging when I get home from tour is the lack of structure, because when you're on tour you have your whole day, every day planned out for you, and you sort of just get really accustomed to it. And then when you get home and like you don't have that anymore, and you have to really like be quite proactive in like, you know, what you're going to do. And like Polly said, keeping busy, like for me, finding things to keep me occupied when I'm not on the road is like vital for just keeping me sane.
Highlighting his experience within his creative practice. In at number 2, Andy Crofts, The Moons and Paul Weller.
Picasso famously once said that all children are born artists. The challenge is to remain an artist as you grow older. And there's obviously a lot of people listening to this who will be having day-to-day jobs and not necessarily having the level of success or kind of the kind of heights that you might have met. From your perspective, what message would you give to artists who may not be monetizing the art that they're doing?
If you're doing it for money, then you're in the wrong business. Do you know what I mean? You're not, and it's not even a business. I hate that word. You know, if you're doing anything, any kind of art, in the hope that you're going to be rich out of it, then what? You've got to do it because that's where your heart is and your mind is at. Be happy doing it. Do you know what I mean? Just feel like you need to do it, and the world cannot stop you. You know, and then if you make money out of it, if you sell a few paintings or photos or albums, whatever you're doing, then that's a bonus. Think for yourself. Just be completely involved in what you're doing, because if you're thinking about money, you're in the wrong world.
Andy discusses his musical influences in grade of his own songwriting process.
2 situations. There was one man over the road, called Elson, and he was the most amazing pianist. He had a bedroom upstairs, and he had a piano in it, and his window was open, and sometimes you just hear this most beautiful music coming out. He was playing this 12-string guitar in front of me, and I was just like, my mind was blown. And then another friend who I hung around with, called Ian Swan, me and him, we found a guitar in a skip.
You found it in the skip?
Yeah, it was mainly him. He kept it, this white acoustic. And then we kind of learned around that. He ended up joining this covers band. First gigs I ever went to, because he was a bit older than me, was his gig at a working men's club. I remember sitting there watching it thinking, this is weird. Like, I can't explain the feeling. It was just a band in a working men's club, but I was like kind of transfixed with it.
Also discussing work with artist Paul Weller.
I was in a band called the On-Offs with my friend Danny Connors and Luke Goddard, and we were like, in 2006, we basically supported like everyone, the Zootons, Ordinary Boys, Rifles, Reading and Leeds and all of that. Nice. All in one year, no album.
Wow.
Just a couple of singles or whatever. And we were really like hot on it, and the magazines were picking up on us. And then we got this support for Paul Weller after the gig, because they had to shoot off, so I never got to speak to Paul after the show. And I emailed his record label, because I didn't know how to get hold of him, and just said, could you pass a message to Paul just saying thank you for having us? I want to know he got it, because it's a one-off show and it's cool. A phone call, I had a missed phone call, voicemail, and I opened it and he went, "All right, it's Paul Weller, and just wanted to say, yeah, nice one, lads, blah blah blah. If you ever want to use the studio and that." I had these really rough demos, home demos, which were like Jennifer Sits Alone, nice. English Summer. He got back and said he liked it. Time passed, and I sent him the old message when I was pissed, because I had his number. You know, I got Paul Weller's number, everyone. I think I sent him a message saying, if you ever need a bass player or a musician, another drunk one, I know you probably don't, because you're sorted, but if you do, get in touch. I had this message one day saying, we're looking for a keyboard player. Did you want to have a go?
Nice.
And then that was it.
Entry number 1, the 1975 touring band featuring Polly Money, Gabby King and John Vaughan. This first interview was a deep dive into the band's dynamics when touring.
You can barely hear the kind of, the verse being sung on stage. It's all the audience, which is really, really kind of, moving. When you're playing the same set every night, it's like I'm an artist, in my true form. So it's like it's nice to have that moment, and it is very special, especially when you've got literally 20,000 people singing it.
With a hectic tour schedule, this provides insight into the life of touring artists.
Such a highlight of all of our careers, and we had so many of our friends and family there. It really does remind me of New York in that particular time in the campaign, where it was at the very beginning of this 18-month tour stretch that we all knew it was going to take us around the world, playing these really exciting venues and festivals, and so it's a particularly poignant.
And concludes with a live performance of the 1975's If You're Too Shy, Let Me Know. A huge thank you to everybody who was part of the podcast this year, especially our guests. 2025 is definitely going to be a big year, with tons planned already that I am so excited to be a part of, and I hope you guys watching are too. Make sure, like I mentioned, you like and subscribe, hopefully to see more of me, to keep up to date with more episodes of the StageLeft podcast, coming to you in 2025.